Hi, welcome if you're new, welcome back if you're not new. Come on in, let's talk about it. So I'm a level with you. Budgeting, saving, investing, all of that is hard. It's difficult. I don't like doing it. But I'm hoping that it's not that hard. There's an easy way to do all of this because these are life skills that we need for the rest of our lives. So in this video, I'm going to give you a couple tips that hopefully will make your budgeting, saving, financial journey a bit easier as it has mine. So this particular video is going to be broken down into 4 parts. And one key thing I want to say before I get started, which I'll repeat throughout the entirety of this video, is to make sure that you have a due date and an amount for each of these categories that I'm going to list. That's very important. Now to start, step 1, what are your fixed expenses? So here's a definition of fixed expenses. Fixed expenses basically mean that these numbers are not going anywhere. They're not going to change anytime soon. For instance, if your rent is $500 a month, your rent is $500 a month each month. That's it. That number shouldn't jump to $650 just because your landlord had a bad day or he stubbed his toe and now he got medical to raise his rent so that he can compensate for the medical expenses. No, it's $500 a month. It's $500 a month. Now that's just what I do, but you don't have to plan your stuff on a monthly basis. Plan it in a way that is best for you. You can plan it on a weekly basis. You could plan it on a bi-weekly basis. Just kind of figure out a system that works for you and stick to that system. Now for me and my fixed expenses, I take note of those at the beginning of each month just because I'm a bit of a scatterbrain. So I'll forget things and I'll misplace things and I'll forget that something's due on the 15th and now it's the 20th. I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to pay that. So I do it at the beginning of the month just so I can plan my month out and know exactly where my money is going. Key takeaway, just make sure that you're clearly aware of what your fixed expenses are, how much you're allocating from your monthly, weekly, however often you get paid, your income, how much of your income is being allocated to these fixed expenses. When are they due? And what is the amount for each of these expenses as well? Rolling right along, step 2, what are your floating expenses? Here's a quick definition because I love definitions and you'll see that. But floating expenses are expenses that do change over time, depending on the year, the activities planned, what's going on in that month. These things will change and will have varying amounts and dates. So here's an example of a floating expense. Let's say my birthday is in June, which it is, and I want to plan a birthday trip. That would be a floating expense because I'm not having a birthday trip every month. I have one once a year, and what I do on that day may vary. One year it may be a birthday trip, the next year it may just be a birthday dinner. So that's an example of a floating expense. Point 3, you got some goals? Make sure that you make note of those goals. Whether it's moving to a new apartment, whether it's you want to go to Italy this summer, whatever that goal is, make sure that you allocate a near about time for it. Both times to book things, times to plan things out, times to allocate things. Just make sure there's values assigned to these amounts. And also make sure that you put due dates for things. And I'll get into this point in my 4th point, but the other thing is to make sure that if it's something that you're planning further out, like let's say now it's January and you want to do something in July, make sure that you have an amount because that will allow you to slowly pick away at that goal over time. So now you have 7 months to be able to save up for this thing instead of you waiting until June and you're like, oh, I want to go to Italy in July. and now you have to take large chunks of your income, or maybe you just don't have enough to be able to make that plan possible. Just make sure that you have an amount and you set that amount as early as possible so that you can slowly start making a plan for your income, so you can start allocating it to those goals that you're having. Now, there are plenty of floating expenses, and at the end of this video, which I should have mentioned at the beginning, but at the end of this video, I'm going to give you an example of how I budget and show you kind of like my breakdown pen to paper. But the key takeaway here is just to make sure you overcompensate in this area, because with activities and things like that, it can vary. You may plan certain activities and certain activities fall through, or the prices may change, or if you're booking in advance, change the budget to some degree, like plane tickets and things like that. The further out you book it, the cheaper it may be. So take all of those things in consideration. Also, lifestyle matters. So if you're the type of person who likes to go on trips often, or likes to have a spa day every week, make sure those things are included in your floating expenses, so and try to assign an estimated value. It doesn't have to be particularly accurate, but give it some leeway. Like if it's $100, give yourself an extra $100 just for cushioning. And also, if that money, like if you end up only spending $100, maybe you can take that extra $100 that you already put aside and allocate it to something else, like your savings or an investment that you want to do, and compiling that money over time. And I know I repeated this before, but come here close. Come here. Make sure that there is a value assigned to this and a date. This won't be the last time. Also, another important thing in this section is to distinguish between your short-term and your long-term goals. Let's say you got a cruise. That's a short-term goal. If the cruise is this year, that's a short-term goal. Anything that's 6 months to a year, 6, 9 months is a short-term goal, and anything like 2, 3, 4 years, that's a long-term goal. So let's say you want to buy a house. Guess what? That's a long-term goal. Depending on your time frame and how quickly you're trying to get that house, or how quickly you're trying to adhere to those goals, just make sure you categorize them by short-term and long-term, so that you can know in your head, okay, I need to be saving intensively for my short-term goals, and for my longer-term goals, I need a long-term plan so that I can make these long-term goals happen in this allocated time. Hey, and you've heard this before, but come here. Let me tell you something. Make sure that there is a date and an amount assigned to each of these goals. It don't have to be an accurate date, but at least make sure that, it's a range. It's a range of dates. A time frame. That's a better word. A time frame in which you want these goals to come into full fruition. And step 4, maybe the best step, maybe the worst step, because it means less money in your pocket, but it means more successful goals and more successful budgets and planning. But it's to list out your income. Make sure you know when you're going to get paid, how much you're going to get paid. Now, you should take my information and cater it to your own experience and your own situation, and how much money you make, and what your goals are, and what your expenses and everything is. Just make sure you're realistic, and make sure that you know about how much money you're getting and how much money is coming out. That's the main goal for this video, and for my approach to it is the reason why I start off with my expenses is because these are things that, regardless of how I feel or how much money I'm making, these are the things that have to be paid. Goals can vary, and maybe you'll have to substitute some goals out for expenses because one month you may have less income than another month. But just being aware, just increasing your awareness. And I know that at the beginning when I started budgeting for myself, when I started budgeting for myself, it was nerve-wracking to look at my money and be like, why are my expenses so much higher than my actual income? And what am I doing? And am I like, do I need to change jobs? Do I need to do this, that, and the third? And I think increasing your awareness allows you to be able to prepare for what's next. Whether that is you need to get a new job, whether that is you need to lessen some of your expenses, whether that means that you need to alter some of your goals and push some of your goals off. Like, if you want to move and go to a new apartment that may have an increased rent, after doing this, you'll know whether or not you'll actually be able to do something like that, and if that's realistic for your situation. That's the main goal for all of this. So maybe the part you've been waiting for, maybe you haven't. This is the part I've been waiting for, is the example, because I work best with examples. So let me get a pen and paper and let me lay this all out for you. As promised, here's how I would set up my fixed and floating expenses, goals, and income. As you can see, I started off with my fixed expenses, broke this up into 3 categories: the description, the amount, and then the due date. So for my first one, I have rent. That's $900 a month, due on the 1st. Internet, which is $50 a month, due on the 17th. Phone bill, which is $100 a month, due on the 24th. And my credit card, which is $100 a month, due on the 25th. Moving right along, have my floating expenses. Only one I have planned this year is my birthday. I think I might spend $100, but wanted to give myself wiggle room by saying $200. And my birthday falls on June 9th. Next, we have goals. The only one I have this year is to buy a new computer, ranging between $700 and $800, and hopefully between September 10th and October 12th. So next is the income. Since I do have a short-term goal of buying a computer, I just wanted to list out all of the months between now and when my short-term goal is quote-unquote due. So I listed out all of my anticipated income, and then I listed out my paydays. Next step would be, which I didn't show here, but the next step would be to take your fixed and floating expenses and your goals and start breaking down your income amongst these different goals and due dates, just so that you can get an idea of month by month, where is your income being allocated to. And if you'd like a more detailed approach, just let me know.